Want to do a short react? Yeah, we can do a short react. What you guys want to do a react? Do a react. Give me a sec. All right. What are we at? I get to introduce someone to Punky Doodle next. I'm gonna scream if we get to that. I'm gonna be so happy. All right. I have heard bad things about. Oh yeah, we can do it. I want to react to this real quick. You guys don't mind? We're gonna react to this. Where is it? Where is it? This is the one I wanted to react to a while ago.
How's it going?
It's YongYea! My man is stacked now, by the way. YongYea is doing good for themselves. Good job. Got like on a really good voice acting role. Getting the buff. He has like evolved. He has evolved. Right. We're gonna watch this. It's about Dragon Age creators and what they said in regards to their failure.
See, my background is a little different today. I recently moved to a new space. It's a far bigger space. I'm really excited to
so happy for
put this all
YongYea.
together, but for now, it's gonna look like a bit of a mess. And
I want you to know, one of the few YouTuber merches I've bought is his loot crates. He has little stress balls that are literally crates. They're little tiny loot crates, and it says "quite ethical" on them.
As you watch my videos, I'm sure you'll slowly watch this room evolve. But today, I would like to discuss Dragon Age The Veilguard and what EA had to say about why this game ultimately...
Spoiler alert! They're freaking evil and ignorant!
bombed. You would think they would learn the lessons that...
No, I would not. I know EA. They will not. They refuse to learn from any type of failure.
should have been applied, but of course, executives have no idea what they're talking about. They seldom have really earned their jobs and the salary that they intake.
Like, what is with these game companies and constantly promoting the marketing team? Like, I understand you want to reward good workmanship and stuff. What all that encourages the marketing team to do is throw everyone else under the bus and, like, get you to, like, promote quick gains. Because the second they get promoted, they don't care about what happens to the market department. Because you've already promoted them. You're letting them fail upwards. Like, that's what the gaming company, the scene is looking right. That's why a lot of AAAs are failing right now, is they let all their marketing team fail upwards.
It just makes no sense that they're in the position that they are.
So, like, 90% of their staff is now people that failed upwards. Not really good for their role. No, like, qualifications. It's just like you're asking to fail. That's why some of these companies are going to close soon.
They know so little about.
Here's the thing. I said this when I was way younger, and my dad kind of laughed. He said, "You probably could." Like, he didn't want to admit it, but he's like you could see him nodding his head. I could market circles around these people because I actually care what my customer wants. I would know what the customer wants because I'm interested in the product. You need a marketing team that, one, cares about the product, and two, understands the product. Both of these things are not happening right now for a lot of companies. Larian Studios and I think one other game company, I can't remember what it is right now, in the big companies do this. Everyone else, idiots. Well, traditional ads can work for games. That's the misconception, Jello. It's the problem is none of the marketing teams know how to do it. I don't understand why they don't. The way you would do it with a game, it really heavily depends on the game. But also, if you have an established franchise, appeal to your established customer base. Stop trying to appeal to everyone. And stop gaslighting or, like, stabbing your previous customers in the back. It's that simple. I don't understand why no one can get it. It makes no sense.
Things like, hey, why did our product fail? So Dragon Age The Veilguard, as many of you may know, ultimately really didn't...
Spoiler alert, by the way, you're going to all say, what the hell, when you hear what they think is the reason it failed.
not meet expectations at all, with the game having engaged approximately 1.5 million players during the...
Please note that engaged is being used here to obfuscate the actual answer. Engaged means they played the demo, looked at the store page, watched videos on it and stuff. Like, no, like, it's not watched videos, it's something else. But, basically, a lot of that number is probably people that got the game for free. Because it was given away for free with stuff. Because they were so desperate to get it out there. Because it failed terribly. I highly suspect it did like 75% less than what they want it to do. Or less. That's why they're saying engaged. Because then they get to say it was just 50% down. They don't have to admit how bad it failed. Better to admit 50% than 75 or 80%, which I highly suspect is the case.
Quarter down nearly 50% from the company's expectations. And the fact that they use the word engaged is significant because it doesn't mean that this game sold 1.5 million units, but rather that 1.5 million players checked the game out through things like the free trial and whatnot. And so the terminology there is very important in terms of units sold. It's probably potentially significantly less than 1.5 million, which is a far cry from even the worst selling entry in past Dragon Age games. So this was a major flop for EA, especially given how long this game was in development, given all of the trials and tribulations that were involved in shipping this game. And it may very well have killed Dragon Age. One of the developers did come out and say that Dragon Age isn't dead because it's yours now. But as I mentioned before, that kind of reads like a eulogy, like this dead thing isn't really dead because it lives in our hearts kind of a thing, but it doesn't exist in the physical realm anymore. At least for now. Who knows, maybe they'll revive it down the line, but that seems less likely, especially if BioWare doesn't knock it out of the park with Mass Effect 5 and make headways when it comes to, you know, bringing EA money, because that's ultimately what they're aiming for. And along the way, we have seen a round of layoffs within BioWare that indicates that EA is starting to clean house and that they're losing their patience with BioWare.
Here's the thing. Larian's already, like, roasted Hasbro for this. Stop firing your senior staff that actually know what they're doing. They can only do so much. They're not the reason you failed. Although in this case, probably they are. Because you already fired all the people that actually knew what the hell they were doing. You're so smart. Guys, just make me like a virtual CEO of one of these game companies, and I bet you within a year, I will turn your entire financial situation around to positive. You just have to pay me, I don't know, 1/10 of what you pay a CEO. Like, you know what? Just give me $1,000. No. $2,000 a month. Royalty for the rest of my life. That's only $2,000. That's like, what, $24,000 a year? What do you pay your CEOs? Like, billions? Millions? It'll take years before I ever even get close to that person's... Give you $2,000 for free? No. But no, I will teach them and teach their marketing team how to actually sell a game and how to do it good. That's all I ask. Make me like the virtual CEO. And I will teach you the ways of marketing.
Where I'm almost wondering if...
Spoiler, I did marketing in college for a bit. Like a lot.
Get to ship Mass Effect 5. At best, that's their absolute last chance.
I'm not doing it for meta. Hell no. Let
Jason Fry kind of highlighted how it's a miracle that Dragon Age The Veilguard even shipped at all in the state that it did, because EA mandated this game to be a live service before the project was
That was like their first issue. Like, I understand you want a live service, but certain franchises do not gratiate themselves to that concept. Dragon Age is one of them. You see how bad Elder Scrolls Online is. It barely inks by. And that's because they are passionate people. Realize that your franchise isn't nearly as big as Elder Scrolls, and realize you're failed before you even start if you try this. If you're an RPG or something, you just can't do it. They can't become live service because you never do it right, or the game itself does not gratiate to the concept. It's like, I'm trying to think of a good concept. It's like trying to mix oil and water. They don't mix very well. Like, you could eventually kind of mix them a little bit. That's Elder Scrolls Online. It kind of got mixed. But, like, if you want a live service, you're just going to have to do the thing that every successful one did and freaking create the concept.
Booted into a more single-player focused experience. And so the fact that they were able to make that shift and transition and reverse course and still ship a product that worked, you know, that within a...
Like, to say worked is generous, very generous.
Itself is miraculous.
But that's... I can't blame YongYea. Because he's very, like, he tries to be as neutral as possible.
And a lot of why...
He didn't do a good job sometimes, but he does try. And I appreciate and respect that.
Project suffered had to do with EA's...
Some people get mad at him. But at the end of the day, it's his job to, like, fairly review. And sometimes that sounds like you're backing them up when you're not. You're trying to, like... You're trying to go both. You're trying to bash something while also, like... say the good points. Because if you don't, it's a biased review. You have to... But yeah, YongYea does a pretty good job.
Mandates, and so now the developers are the one who gets to get laid off and get...
Which makes no sense. 1, you made the deadline. 2, it's usually the marketing team's fault. 3, it's now no longer even the marketing team's fault. It's the CEO's fault. They picked quick gains over long-term investment. You're seeing that come back to bite them because everyone got pissed off and tired of it. And now even the normies look at what the gamers say about the game before they buy a game. You think they don't, but like this is clear indication that they're starting to. These games like this are just failing outright.
Get scapegoated for this. Now, speaking of that transition from single player to live service, this ties into what EA CEO Andrew Wilson had to say about Dragon Age The Veilguard's performance.
And like I said, spoiler alert, prepare to roast the man.
Why he believes it flopped and what he thinks the future of the company should be in terms of the direction that their games should head into.
Spoiler alert, he's incentivized to make as much money as possible. Because he gets bonuses and stuff. And he gets more money than he needs.
So speaking to investors in a call recently, in a financial call, this is a quote that IGN picked out that is very relevant and that could spell just really unfortunate tidings for a few.
If I could buy, like, stock that, like, on the... How do you do it where you basically sell a stock, or you buy the stock and you sell it on the assumption that it'll fail to make money? I don't know how you do that. But if someone would do that for me, I would say buy a lot in EA. Like, for the, like, on the concept that it'll fail. Because it is going to fail. Gamers are tired of it.
Future EA titles. Here's what Andrew Wilson had to say.
To give you an idea, it's like... I'm apathetic to EA now. I used to love them. Then I started hating them because of their sports games. And then they started ruining my favorite games of theirs. And now I'm just, I don't care. You're going to fail, and I know you will.
In order to break out...
Well, no, you get like 50% of the earnings. I think that'll work? Maybe. I don't know. But basically, I'm telling you, it's going to fail.
Beyond the core audience, games need to directly connect to the evolving demands of players who increasingly seek shared world features and deeper
They do not.
engagements alongside high-quality narratives in this beloved category. Dragon Age had a high-quality launch and was well-reviewed by critics and those who played. However, it did not resonate with a broad enough audience in this highly competitive market. They're back to spouting the same bullshit that they have spouted in the past about how single-player experiences are dying, what players want.
I love that they have the audacity to say single-player experiences are dying. When did Baldur's Gate 3 come out? Not even a year ago? One of the best games, still got a lot of player base. I plan on going back to it. Some of the biggest games on some of my friends and other VTubers I watch's channels are single player games like Dark Souls. Like, people are going back to the old Dark Souls. Doesn't that scream of single player experiences are king still? If the biggest games right now are still single player?
If live services, and so the ideal future for gaming is if everything was live services. That's kind of what's being said here. Evolving demands of players who increasingly seek shared world features. The suggestion being that we're all moving away and
Or not. We're moving closer towards
distancing ourselves from single player games, that we no longer like those, and that we demand more live services, which is just woefully untrue. And that has been...
Here's the thing. There's a reason MapleStory has a lot of people still playing it. There's a reason Mabinogi still has people still playing it. Because you haven't made a game better than those. That should tell you something. If people are still playing WoW Classic, that's another issue. I don't know about that one. But all these other live services, if you noticed, most of the new ones don't get nearly as many numbers as the old ones. Because the old ones are still updating. They are live service. They still have an audience that's big enough for them to keep updating. I'm sorry. Genshin 1, you can't have a gacha now. It has like 5 gachas and all of them are popular. You're competing with all 5 of Genshin's games and like 4 of the phone games. If you can't make something better than them, stop. If you think you can, think again. Because history has taught us so far, no, you can't.
Proven time and again by numerous non-live service releases that have gone on to break records time and again. In the same call with investors, another EA executive, Chief Financial Officer Stuart Canfield, had something similar to say about Dragon Age The Veilguard, its underperformance, and what that means for the landscape of gaming. He said Dragon Age The
Underperforming, icing the competitive dynamics of the single-player RPG market. Here's the thing. Not only was your game filled to the brim with preachy and unnecessary crap. Like, no one wants to be forced that. Am I okay with trans stuff and, like, all that stuff? Yes. But also, your message was basically, oh, these people are terrible. Do you think I want a friend who, if I just make one mistake on accident, I have to do push-ups in front of them? Hello? Where did you think that was a good idea? Hello? Earth to CEO brain? No, there's a lot of single-player games that are doing amazing.
Veilguard underperformed, icing the competitive dynamics
Shut up, you can.
of the single-player RPG market. Historically, blockbuster storytelling has been the primary way our industry bought beloved IP to the players. The game's financial performance highlights the evolving industry landscape and reinforces the importance of our actions to reality.
They're using a lot of big words here. Basically, what they're saying is, we should totally do live service, guys. Because it makes so much money. Ignore all the recent companies that have lost billions and millions of dollars in vast quantities trying to do this. We should do this. Because we're totally better than them.
Allocate resources towards our most significant.
And I at least have a little bit of... I don't think I should have any hope for any EA game after this point, but I have a tiny bit of hope for Mass Effect. Because the lead designer, like the guy in charge basically, was like, no. This is the first person, realism, everything. Which is what we want from a Mass Effect game, from what I understand. If they're like stressing that that's a thing while this game is failing, I feel a little hope. Just a tiny little grain. Once I start seeing stuff, it might grow, it might die. We don't know yet.
And highest potential opportunities, referring to share world experiences to live services, except you already tried that before. Do you remember Anthem at all, which also came from BioWare, by the way? You tried to push this studio that is traditionally known for single-player RPG experiences, expansive narrative campaign-driven experiences, tried to have them tackle live services, which is a genre.
Like, they don't understand that a dev can't just jump onto a new genre or a new concept of or type of game. When they need experience in it. Like, they need to tinker around with it. They need to see what they feel works. It's like basically telling a person that draws for a living to suddenly paint. Yes, some of the concepts are transitionable, but not all of them. And then now they're missing, like, vast amounts of knowledge that they would need to get the same level of quality. You've asked a person that would draw with pencil to paint. And on top of that, you've went, oh, I want watercolors, which is an even harder brand of paint to use. Like, you not understand that concept. You've asked them to use it, one, an entirely different medium, two, an entirely different type of said medium, where there's almost no transitional overlap of their skills. All they have is basically design, basically only the art department. They're the only ones that have any, like, real transitional skills. So the game's gonna look pretty, but it's gonna be crap. Because the devs never have touched that type of game, or they have no interest in that type of game. Gaming is, like, developing a game is an art form. Here's the, like, I think I'm gonna get roasted when I say this, because I've seen a lot of the, like, people, like, roasting him. I looked at Pirate Software's little wrap-up thing when he was addressing why the game's not done yet and stuff. And I understand what he means. What you don't understand is he wanted to, like, he started doing the dev updates with it. Like, he started streaming, making the game to show people, like, the development process. What I understand of Pirate Software, yeah, he was probably a bad person in the past, but it seems like he's actively working on being a good person. What you don't understand is one of the things he does is he's being 100% transparent with people. Like, he said, I'm going to start doing this monthly blog where I show you exactly what I've done as a way to make me accountable. Like, he's like, yeah, I know, I didn't do as much as I should have. We're going to change that. We're going to, like, basically put in place an idea that basically forces me to actively make more. so that I get this game out. Like, at least, like, well, it remains to be seen if he actually does it, but, like, that gives me the concept, or at least the thought process, that he feels bad about what he hasn't done. Like, I know that there are things that I still need to do, but you don't understand how scatterbrain, ADHD, and, like, pure, like, unknown fear delays a lot of my decisions. Because I want to make the right decision the first time. That, and I always second guess myself. I'm like, am I sure this is correct? Do I really want to go this way? It's like, am I as championing of him as now? No. I'm gonna have to be honest with myself. I think he needs to prove himself first. But for now, I withhold judgment. Like, you could make a lot of stupid decisions and still be a good person. Like, humanity is built on the idea of making stupid decisions. We make mistakes so we can learn. But anyways, like YongYea is saying, they're stupid.
That they were unfamiliar with, that they were just not experienced enough with. And guess what happened? It just completely bombed. It launched in an unacceptable state.
They didn't know what to do.
The ideas behind it were interesting and there was potential there, but development was woefully troubled. They only really started building the game in the last year and a half of this 6 years long development cycle. It was a disaster for EA and BioWare. And so you want to just go back to that? Not to mention all of the live service.
I think the famous saying everyone in gaming almost is familiar with probably by now. Insanity is making the same decision time and time again, expecting a different result.
That have been shutting down and flopping left and right in recent years. I mean, you've got Marvel's Avengers, which has the Avengers name behind it, one of the most recognizable IPs in the world. You have a game like that flopping. You've got Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which featured the entire Justice League alongside the Suicide Squad. That recently shut down because it's so woefully underperformed, because the live service component felt so shoved into an experience where it didn't feel like live service belonged.
You really want a live service, train up people in that industry. You're gonna have to start small. Because you obviously can't hit the ground running. Because you obviously don't have devs that are familiar or have a passion for it.
Recently, Multiverses shut down. That is essentially the Warner Brothers Super Smash Brothers that feature some of the biggest IPs.
And for, spoiler alerts on why that failed, they tried to monetize each and every character. Why do you think Super Smash Bros. In the first place did good? They didn't charge you for each and every character. The only reason they started charging for the characters near the end, the ultimate, was these are huge characters from other franchises. What are the biggest reasons you can... the monetization is one thing, but charging for the characters is what killed them. And then making it, a grind and a half to get one character? No, not happening. And then some of the characters felt like they didn't even try with their skill sets. But yeah.
Some of the most recognizable IPs in the world all kind of coming together in one game. Even that, with all of those recognizable IPs, wasn't enough to save that game.
Like I was saying though, Sephiroth and Cloud? You know how, Square Enix is very protective of its star child. They are very protective of the Final Fantasy franchise. Because that's, their biggest. That is the golden child of their franchises. Square wanted to be in Smash Bros. Though, so they worked with them. That's why they were able to get such good characters. Square is the reason we got Sora in there. Because they had to go to the table with Disney, because Disney owns some of the characters with Sora. Like, Square had to bend over backwards and everything to get Disney to be like, okay, fine. Just having that little Disney symbol on his keychain. Like, I'm telling you.
From Doom. And then Concord, I mean, Sony thought that was going to be their billion-dollar
Literally the only reason they charged.
IP, their Star Wars, and it didn't even sell 1 million units, and it did so poorly that they shut the game down 2 weeks after launch, and they made $0 from it after spending hundreds of millions of dollars, so on and so forth. The list just goes on, and I mean, that was a flop so bad that Sony has started to see that just putting all of their eggs in the live service basket was...
Oh, speaking on that, I'll tell y'all something crazy after this.
It's just an awful idea, and so they recently shut down a bunch of live services behind the scenes that they were working on. And then on the other hand, you've got evidence of so many non-live service games that have gone on to do gangbusters, to succeed and sell in a way that any AAA publisher would love. Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2070.
Baldur's Gate 3 is like the biggest like slap in the face for these companies. Single player game, base price of, pretty sure it was 60. Did gangbusters, destroyed every concept. Had one of the highest like player bases. Still has a pretty high player base. They don't like the fact that it did so good. They don't like the fact that Larian basically stomped on all their dreams and said, you suck.
7, Elden Ring, Pal World, Black Myth
Elden Ring, Power World, and Black Myth Wukong. I plan on playing Black Myth Wukong as soon as the internet sticks and stuff.
Wukong. Look at those numbers and tell me that these experiences are no longer as highly demanded, that the landscape is evolving in such a way where these experiences are no longer wanted. It's just a whole lot of nonsense what the EA executives are saying. Dragon Age The Veilguard didn't fail because it wasn't a live service.
Failed because it sucked. And it was a slap in the face to anyone that ever played Dragon Age Origins.
Even if that game had shipped as a live service, I guarantee you, with
it would have done worse.
Direction that it went for, it ultimately would have failed. The issue with Dragon Age The Veilguard was that it didn't appeal to anybody because it had the name Dragon Age in it, but
it wasn't there. There was no Dragon Age. There was like one character.
Direction that it went for with its art style, its aesthetic,
welcome to the stream.
Its tone and atmosphere, and then just the writing not being quite there, and the combat system not being quite what...
Everything on it was like a 6 out of 10. Overall, I'd say the game was a 6 out of 10. It wasn't a 1, it wasn't a 2. I'm sorry. It hurts me, as passionate as I am about Dragon Age, it hurts me to give it a 6. But I know it was a 6. Because, like, the concept of a game was there. But, like, no. You haven't seen a 1 out of a 10 game.
Dragon Age fans were used to. It didn't appeal to Dragon Age fans, and it just didn't appeal to a broad...
That's what I've tried to tell a lot of people, Vader. Dragon Age Inquisition was barely a Dragon Age game.
...broader audience, and so the end result is that you got a game that just really didn't feel like Dragon Age, that people really didn't feel excited about, and that had enough flaws in its numerous systems and was diluted enough in its RPG elements and the aspects that make Dragon Age that it just didn't resonate with people. And so making it a live service wouldn't have mitigated that under the direction that this game was made in. If anything, it might have suffered a greater financial loss because making a live service is just more expensive, and you have to have...
What people don't understand... I really wish Maple would go back to doing this, but Maple used to be... Its main moneymaker was the cosmetics. If they go back to selling like a big package for permanent pets, doing just every now and then giving out some of the older cosmetics for selling them for slightly more and making them permanent for the older cosmetics. Like, I mean, super older. And then, like, that would probably boost their numbers by gangbusters. I don't think they realize that. Because that's the reason why a lot of people quit Maple, is they stopped doing like the cool stuff for the free players and like the cheap players. Bring back trading, but don't make it like as necessary. Like slightly buff all the drop rates. Just a tiny bit. So that like the marketing people can still make money, like still, you know, like sell their stuff in their shops. Because that was a big thing in Maple, was you would go and grind and stuff, you'd get some money, get some drops, like collect your bearings and stuff, decide what you're going to do next with your build, or like where you're going to go next, like to train, depending on your class. And then you go to the stores in the free market and you look through them. You go through all the rooms and decide like, what could I use for my build? Like, yeah, you can kind of make your own builds now, but there are people that just don't want to do that. They like buying the items. And they loved the idea of like going through a little market. And I know a lot of people don't like this, but you're gonna have to bring back the traveling times on the ships. That was a big way your community like bunched together and people like made friends and made like guilds and stuff. Do that, make party quests more valuable again. You don't have to make them as valuable, but make them like a pretty good idea still. And I think MapleStory Classic, like the classic worlds, will explode. They'll go like triple, quadruple. That's how you do a live service.
Infrastructures for keeping this online game.
What a lot of live services don't understand is if your free players leave, your paid players leave because they have no one to show off to. They completely lose their reason to be there. What you don't understand is you're banking on the show-off mentality. America don't really have that. Japan does. Go sell to Japan. If you want to sell to us, you're going to have to do the thing where you... Japan even knows this. Haven't you noticed that they're really respectful of the free-to-play player side? A lot of their best games are? Hello?
Online, and so would have been this endeavor that probably would
it's not always about showing off, but you get the concept.
Have ultimately gone down the Anthem path. Like, it's crazy the vicious cycle that these companies go through of like going back to old methods that have clearly failed. I don't know how any CEO can look at the current landscape of live services and the ratio of successes versus failures with...
The ratio is about like 10% success, 90% failures, basically.
Failures encompassing the vast majority of live service releases. I don't know how they can look at that landscape and say we should focus on live services, and clearly live service is the solution to all our problems. Any failure...
We have a vast majority of live services. Like I said, too many. And all the ones that are currently out, they have all the people. You have to do something better or cooler than them.
On the single player front is because it wasn't a live service and not because of all these other reasons, when you've got all these other single player games succeeding that highlight that single player games are far from dead, that the demand for single player games or for non-live service experiences is extremely high. If not...
But they can't admit that, because that admitting that basically kills their company. Because every single investor will be like, but that's all you're focusing on.
Higher than those of live services, because that genre has become so oversaturated and has become so exploitative And it just, people like an experience that has a beginning, middle, and end, and not something that has to go on forever, that feels like a part-time job, one that
very few games do I like go on forever.
Often aims to exploit players through psychologically manipulative monetization tactics.
And it's get to the point where I don't like the gotchas, because they don't respect their older characters. If they don't start like buffing their older characters, they don't have to be as strong as the new characters, but I'm feeling like my older characters were never worth it in the first place, which is making me question why I'm still playing, because the characters I have now are going to be worthless.
And foam.
Like, the only thing that really keeps me now is the story. That and the fact that I can still kind of use my older characters.
More elements. People just want to lose
the
themselves in a world and play a game that was made to be purely fun and to have players escape. Even former BioWare developers were baffled that EA CEO would suggest such a dumbass, ridiculous notion. Right here we have Mike Laidlaw, who was the former creative director of Dragon Age. He tweeted, or he, on Blue Sky, posted the following. Look, I'm not a fancy CEO guy, but if someone said to me the key to this successful single-player IP success is to make it purely a multiplayer game, no, not a spin-off, fundamentally change the DNA of what people loved about the core game,
exactly.
To me, I'd probably quit the job or something. Mike Laidlaw just didn't pull any punches because, the reasoning is just really it's dumb,
so
stupid,
dumb.
And ridiculous. He continued, just thinking out loud, of course, who'd be silly enough to demand something like that? Twice, referring to Anthem. Has EA learned nothing from that? Next, we got David Gator, who was the lead writer and also the creator of the setting of Dragon Age. He posted the following: maybe I'm being unkind. There are certainly all sorts of lessons a company could learn from a game like Veilguard, and it failing. I still haven't played it, so I'm going off of what other people have said. But maybe it should have been a live service. Being the takeaway seems a bit short-sighted and self-serving.
This is the guy that tried to champion it. Even he's admitting, he's like, I don't know about that, though.
My advice to EA, not that they care, you have an IP that a lot of people love deeply. At its height, it sold well enough to make you happy, right? Look at what it did best at the point where it sold the most. Follow Larian's lead and double down on that. The audience is still there and waiting.
Exactly. Do what Larian did. Write a love letter to that core audience, and they won't shut up about it. They will support it to the moon. Look at the mods on Baldur's Gate. They're getting to the point where there's almost as many mods on Baldur's Gate as there is Skyrim. And that, people, is terrifying.
Thank you. I couldn't have put it better myself. Why is Dragon Age Origins so beloved among fans? I
can't wait for the massive mods to start dropping for Baldur's Gate, because people are working on those right now. D&D players are super meticulous. DMs, there's some massive Baldur's Gate mods just around the corner.
Dragon Age Inquisition go on to sell 12 million units in its lifespan. Look into that instead of going, well, everything has to be a live service because herpy-derp. I don't even know the reasoning behind why they think this way when they themselves have failed with this attempt at trying to get BioWare to ship a live service. I mean, what this is confirmation bias. EA is dead set on believing that live services are the way of the future, and not because they genuinely...
Pretty sure EA is the ones that were like, live services are dead. Single players are dead, and then got, smashed in the face before with a game coming out. I don't remember what the game was, but they got basically told, sit down and shut up, by another company that releases a blockbuster first single player.
They believe that that's what's best for gaming as a whole, but because they know that's the most profitable venture, so they have to
debatable
to justify every non-live service failure as it being because it wasn't a live service, while ignoring all the evidence suggesting that the high demand for single player experiences or for non-live service experiences, that all of that still exists at an all-time high. Some of the highest numbers we've seen on Steam ever, guess what? Are either single player or non-live service experiences with multiplayer components in them, but are not that kind of share world thing that EA has like an erection for. I get that Apex Legends was a huge success, but that was like once in a blue moon. All those live services that end up being enough of a success to become those billion-dollar products, you know, for those companies, those are so rare. You kind of have to win the lottery a little bit with that. Making the assumption that every live service can go on to do $1 billion and, you know, that it won't be a waste of financial resources and manpower and time is a ridiculous notion, especially when the market of live services is more saturated than ever and people's times and money are limited and they can only engage with so many live services. And for you to get them to switch to your live service, you have to output a product that isn't just a generic trend chaser. You have to like set a trend. You have to create something that is irresistible because there's nothing quite like that out there, or it's a better version of what already exists. What Dragon Age The Veilguard needed was better direction, better writing, and just it needed to be more Dragon Age. It needed to have that DNA that it just kind of lost along the way. And that's ultimately why it didn't sell that well and why it didn't resonate with fans and the gaming community. That's really what it is. And if this is the mentality that EA has, I genuinely fear for Mass Effect 5 and whether that project will be rebooted into...
Like I said, there's still a tiny grain of hope right now.
Some bullshit live service that will be detrimental to the potential that that game has if BioWare can kind of pull it together and make a Mass Effect next-gen experience that, you know, kind of lights up the hype amongst sci-fi fans in the way that the original Mass Effect trilogy did. That's what they have to do. What did fans love about the original trilogy? And then, like, run with that. I would not be shocked if EA mandated BioWare to make Mass Effect 5 into some kind of live service or to include...
If they do, they put the nail in the coffin.
...live service elements, which would compromise...
I bet even the last one.
...the experience, because the DNA of Mass Effect, the DNA of Dragon Age, the DNA of BioWare is not live service. And so EA has to steer away from that notion.
Never has been.
But instead, they're doubling down on this thing that more often than not leads...
Give you an idea, Assassin's Creed isn't even good anymore for its online mode. I played the Brotherhood and 2's Brotherhood's online mode because it was really fun. No, not worth it.
Leads to demise and failure and
That's
financial losses. So I just wanted to share this with you guys.
Stupid launcher.
The stupidity and the lack of long-term thinking of CEOs continues to baffle me. Look at what Larian did right. Look at what CD Projekt did right. Look at what all these major successes in the non-life service landscape did right. Why those were successful in that way. And, like, go in that direction. Just because their single-player game failed, it must mean that the whole population just doesn't like single-player games. That's just not how it works. Make something that is as compelling as your Elden Rings and as your Baldur's Gate 3s and as your Cyberpunk 2077s and your Witchers and whatnot. Make something of that caliber, and people will flock to your product, whether it's live service or not. So that's my take. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on YongYea. I'll see you guys next time.
YongYea.
YongYea.
He's a cutie. It was good. Right.